Hello everyone, welcome to College Chronista presentation on C# programming. Again, our .NET course is will focus mostly on C# programming language. Even though .NET Framework supports multiple languages, the primary choice for most of the developers is C# programming. So I will explain why C# is more popular than other languages on the .NET Framework. This is a long presentation which has 40 slides, so it may span up to 45 minutes. So let's get started. C#, what is C#? It's a new programming language available since the advent of .NET, unlike VB.NET, which is actually a port from the native world to the .NET framework. Visual Basic was there even before .NET was there, but that was not the case with C#. It was specifically built for .NET framework, and even now the .NET framework is open source. You should be able to see that quite a considerable amount of .NET framework itself is written in C#. Okay, so this is a language that is developed specifically for .NET. Okay, again, it is an object-oriented programming language and derives most of its features from C++. That's what Microsoft will say, but it derives most of its features from Java. Okay, so it is highly object-oriented. And as I said earlier, some of the components in .NET framework are written using C#. Okay, so Microsoft has been using their own language to develop the .NET framework further. So here are a few of the C# specifications. One is C# is a case-sensitive language like C++, whereas Visual Basic is not case-sensitive. Okay. And every statement in C# should be terminated by semicolon. Variables in C# should be starting with underscore or alphabet. All the methods should have the braces at the end, and within the braces you can have parameters. Do not use case as a differentiating member factor for members in class. Okay, I will explain that later. It's mainly to avoid some interoperability problems with Visual Basic. And then you should not use keywords like for and others which are used by compiler to signify something as a variable name. But in case if you happen to use it for some convention, then prefix that with @. Okay, and the code file that you are writing your C# should have an extension .cs. Okay, it cannot be any other extension because the compiler won't compile, so it has to be a .cs extension. And then CSC, that is the command line compiler for C#, that is used to compile the C# code into MSIL. In C# code, unlike Java, the file name and the class within the file name can be totally different, but even Java got rid of that actually very recently. So this is the basic specifications of C#. So let's go deeper. So comments, in any programming language, okay, the first thing that you are supposed to write is not really the logic. You're supposed to write a brief comment about what this program is and what each part of the program does, okay, and other things. Okay, so in C# we can write comments in 3 different ways. One is a single line comment, which can start anywhere in the line, even if that line has a code with a double slash, okay, forward slash, and whatever follows the double slash till the end of the line is treated as a comment. Okay, and the compiler will ignore it. Okay, so after the 2 forward slash, if you have any text, that is a comment. Okay, so you can see an example where when I define a variable, I explain what that variable is used for. Okay, So like that. Multi-line comment, okay, you may need to write a very descriptive comment about the program and other things. So you can do that in C style, which is // uh, and then enter comments in as many lines as you want, and then finally terminate it with star and /. Okay, the text enclosed within this will be treated as comment by the compiler, and it won't even be interpreted. Okay, and the third type of comment that C# supports is called as XML based comment, which is actually used to generate some documentation out of your class. Okay, and I will show that during the demo. So every line in the XML comment based comment should start with 3 /. Okay, and then again, if you make some syntax errors in the XML, don't worry, you won't get any compilation error. Okay, but it's just your documentation won't be built properly, that's all. Okay, so as you can see, I'm writing something called remarks about this class. Okay, so C# .NET Framework provides a set of XML tags that you can use as comments for documentation. Okay, and I will go through that during the demo. Okay, what are the different XML tags that you can use to generate comments, so that way when a class links to your application or your class, it gets sufficient information for the programmer to understand what this method does, what this parameter is for, what the method returns, and all those things. Okay, so this is about, and then .NET Framework has tools that will generate documentation out of your XML comments, and you can, it's sort of like a help file generator, so that people who want to use your class read the help file before they actually start using your class. Data types. Okay, as with any programming language, data types is the fundamental to any programming language, where we want to know what type of data can be stored in the application. So in .NET, C# especially, it's the same for all .NET languages actually. All the objects, all the data types derive from a parent data type called system.object. Okay, and that system.object is actually a structure similar to C structure. Okay, and under that system.object you have two types. One is value type, the other is reference type. Okay, and we'll explain, the next slide will explain what these are. Okay, the value types has built-in data types like integer, float, character, and other things. Okay, very primitive data types. Enumeration and even structure is a value type. Okay, the reason these value types are stored in a data structure called stack. Okay, so that's the main difference. Okay, the reference types are mostly like objects or something related to objects. Classes, string is again a class. Interface is actually like a contract to a class. Delegates, boxed value types. Okay, I will explain what those are. These reference types are actually stored on a tree-like structure called memory heap. Okay, so this is the wider classification of data types, and let's go deep into that. So what are the difference between value types and reference types? Value types are stored in stack, as I said, whereas reference types are stored in a heap. And when you assign value from one value type to another value type, actually it gets cloned. Okay, and the two instances operate independently. For example, A equal to B means a new memory location is allocated for A and it holds the value individually, and changing the value in B does not affect the value in A. Whereas in case of reference type, when you try to say A equal to B, it means A and B are now going to point to the same location. Okay, it's not cloned, it's both of them are just pointing to the same location, and when they actually value in B changes, it will be reflected in A. So you have to be very careful when you pass reference types from one function to the other function, and if the called function is modifying the passed parameter, it will get reflected in the function that is actually passing the parameter. So you have to be very careful when you use reference types. Okay, and you have to be very careful. Do you really want these two variables to share, or do you want to clone it? Okay, so you have to be very careful. And value types cannot be set to null, which means like they will have a default value, whereas reference types can be set to null, which means they are not yet allocated any memory space. Okay, and again, as a .NET developer, before using any reference type, you should instantiate it. Okay, I will explain what it is. And again, your application should never get this error called null reference exception. Okay, it is actually an insult to be a .NET programmer if your application gets this error, null reference exception. Okay, so you have to avoid that at any cost. Okay, and then there are a few scenarios where you may need to convert your value type to a reference type. Okay, and .NET provides some options to it, and it is called boxing. Okay, value to reference is called as boxing, and converting a reference to value is called unboxing. Okay, so this is a very important interview question. Value types are by default passed by value to the other methods, which means if you pass a from function a, if you declare a in function a and pass it to function b, if function b modifies that parameter value, it won't get reflected in function a. Okay, so whatever function that passes the value, it is immutable. Okay, so when it gets reference type is passed by reference to the other methods, which means if function a is passing a parameter a to function b, and if function b modifies the value of a, this will get reflected in function a. Okay, so you have to be very careful when you pass these parameter types. Built-in integer values. Okay, so as you know, integers are numbers without any decimal points. Okay, and there are these many types of integers that you can use in C#. So these are the integer types. Again, you can see the size of them, and some of them allow positive, some of them don't allow positive values. Okay, so you have to be very careful. Okay, signed means it allows either plus or minus sign to be stored as in the first bit, I guess, and then if it is the unsigned, it means it's assumed to be only positive. Okay, so whatever size you want either 2 byte, 4 byte, 8 byte, you can start using it. Okay, so this is about integers. The other data types are actually float, double, single, decimal. All these help you to store decimal numbers, but with a different precision. Okay, like in the sense, some of them allow you to store 14 digits of decimal accurately, some of them like 28 or something. So depending upon the accuracy level that you want, you can choose which one you want. Mostly people use decimal. That is good. And then character, again, it's a Unicode character, not just English characters. You can store characters from other languages too. Okay, so .NET is a completely Unicode supported language. Okay, so you can have your string values, character values from any language. Okay? So Unicode character set. Okay, and then Boolean, which is true or false value. Okay, and then let's go ahead and find out how to use constants. Okay, as you know, in any programming language there are two basic constructs. One is constant, the other is variable. A constant is something whose values you cannot change once it's defined, and a variable is something whose value can be changed in the due course of the program based on the logics. So constant is something whose value you cannot change. So for example, constant int current year equal to 2007 or 2016. Then it is compiled into the program, and if any code tries to modify the value for that constant, obviously it will throw an error. Okay, so you cannot change the value of a constant during execution times. Constants can only be of value type, not a reference type. Okay, and it can be public, private, protected. I will explain those when we go through the object-oriented part of it. And you can create read-only constants, which means their value is initialized once during the runtime, okay, and then it can never be changed. Okay, so this is about constants. Variable, again, the syntax is very simple. You just specify integer, whatever data type, and then the variable name. Okay, again, every variable must be initialized either during declaration or before they are used. Okay, you have to assign some value to it before you check for its value or something. Okay, so every variable must be initialized with the value before using it in any statement. Okay, so you have to be very careful with that. And C# actually throws warning when you try to use a variable without being initializing it. Okay, so this is about the basic things about variable, and when we do object oriented we will understand much better. Arithmetic operators, the basic arithmetic operators, which is assignment. So if you want to copy a value from one variable to another variable, then you can use equal to. Again, a equal to b means the value of b is copied to a, not the other way around. Okay, so whatever is on the right side, that value is copied to the one on the left side. Okay, and when you do the same for reference type, as I said, it's a little different. Okay, so you have to understand that. Okay, so go back to the slide and understand how reference type assignments work in the value and reference type comparison. Addition, which is like plain mathematics, is just sum two numbers. Subtraction, okay, so a equal to b plus c means add b and c and assign that value to a. Okay, subtraction means a equal to b minus c, that means subtract c from b and give that value to a. Okay, again, multiplication, division is by slash, and then if you want to get the remainder of a division, you have to use percentage. Okay, a equal to b plus c, a equal to b percentage c, that means give the remainder when b is divided by c to a. So in the next example, a equal to 7 percentage 2, a will have a value of 1. Okay, so integer division, which means like you divide a number and then round it to the nearest integer. So a equal to 7, it's not rounded actually, sorry, it's truncated. A equal to b backslash c, that's equal to a equal to 7 by 2 is actually 3, not 3.5 or 4, it's 3. Okay, so you have to be very careful. Assignment operators. Okay, again, these are some of the shorthand operators. We already know the assignment operator is just equal to, but it also provides some more additional shortcut mechanisms, which is a equal to b means you assign the value of b to a, and the next statement is a equal to b equal to 5, which means both a and b are going to get the value 5. Okay, and a equal to b star 3, which means a is going to get the value of 3 times b. Okay, and then addition assignment, which is a plus equal to b is actually equal to a plus b. Take the current value of a, add b to it, and then give the value back to a, new value to a. Okay, so a plus equal to 4, which means a equal to a plus 4. Okay, subtraction assignment is the same thing, a minus equal to b, which means a equal to a minus b. Subtract b from a and give the new value to a. Okay, so these are the ways in which you can reuse the same variable, okay, to store the new values. That's all. Okay, multiplication assignment. Okay, so if you look at these assignment operators very carefully, you have the operator before the assignment equal to. Okay, so it's not the other way around. Okay, so don't get confused, it's plus equal to, not equal to plus. Okay, so we have the same division, modulus assignment, and then we have bitwise operators. Okay, Those are very rare. Even I haven't used it much. And the last three are the most frequently used. Return not null, which is a equal to b double question mark c, which means if b or c, whichever has a memory allocated, give that to a. Okay, so if b is allocated a memory, then give b. If b is not allocated a memory, then give the value of c. Okay, if both of them doesn't have a memory allocated to them, again it will get null. Okay, so even though you specify double quotes, a double question to get not null, it can still get null. This is where developers tend to forget to check it, and then it gets a null reference exception. Okay, and then pre-increment and post-increment. Pre-increment is you increment the value of a by 1 before you execute the next line. Okay, as soon as you execute this. Okay, and post-increment is after you parse that line, then increment the value of a by 1. Okay, again, pre-increment, post-increment is by 1. If you want to increment it by more than 1 or 2, you have to use the addition assignment operator. Okay, and the same applies to decrement operator, where you subtract value by 1 either before or after a particular statement. Okay, so I will do this in a demo where I will show how the values, when these values actually changes when the program gets executed. If else, it's a very important, this is where the control of a program gets altered. So if there is a certain condition that is satisfied, then execute the following statements. Okay, and the extended version of if is else, where you say, hey, if this condition is met, execute these statements. Else, okay, in all other cases, execute these set of statements. Okay, and then the best example is if you want to know whether a number is an odd number or an even number. If a number is divisible by 2, then print it's an even number, else it's an odd number. Okay, so sometimes people get confused. 0 is neither odd nor even. No, 0 is even. It's neither negative nor positive. Okay, so in that case, you cannot use a if else block. You understand that? Because we have 3 conditions to check. If it is positive, okay, is it positive? If it's negative, it's negative. If it's neither positive, neither negative, then it's 0. Okay, so for those, you can use if else if. If a number is greater than 0, it is positive. Else, if, okay, you can again specify a condition, okay, saying, hey, if a number is less than 0, it is negative. If both these conditions are not satisfied, then the number is 0. Okay. You understand that? So we will do a demo on that. And then AND operators. If you want to check for more than one condition, then you can use AND operators. The AND operator is 2 ampersands together. So condition 1 and condition 2, which means both the conditions should be true. Only then the statements within the if block will get executed. OR operator, condition 1 or condition 2, which is 2 pipe operators, which means either condition 1 or condition 2 should be true. Both of them are true, that's also fine, but at least one of them should be true. Okay, and if the first condition is true, it won't even check the second condition again. Okay, and the same with the AND. If the first condition is false, it won't even check the second condition. Okay, so you have to be, that's why some of the errors are not really caught for a long time. Okay, because the condition 1 will most probably satisfy. Only when some condition 1 fails, the condition 2 is checked, and that's when some errors pop up. Okay, so you have to be very careful to use, and even the order of the conditions are very important. Okay, for example, you want to see whether a file is empty or not. Okay, so file dot count byte count. Okay, the byte count in the file, if it's greater than 0, it means it's not empty. But the problem is, most people put that as the condition, but the real condition should be, is the file first of all present in the directory? If it is, then check what's the size of the file. Okay, if you are having only one condition in a if statement, it means you are really assuming something, and make sure that your assumption is actually valid. Okay, or at least write a comment saying, hey, this code assumes that the file is going to be in this location. That's why I'm skipping that check. Okay, and the not condition, sometimes you want to check the opposite. For example, if the file is not empty, then copy it. Okay, got it? So, and then conditional assignment operator, which is, if a particular condition is set, instead of using the if else to do the assignments, you can do it shorthand using this operator. The what the statement actually means is, if D is equal to E, okay, again the way to compare equality is double equal to, not single equal to. If D is equal to E, then assign the value of F to A, else assign the value G to A. Okay? If D is equal to E, assign F to A, else assign G to A. Don't use if else for conditional assignments. Okay, it will make your code look lengthy. Okay, just one line is enough if you want to do a conditional assignment. Okay, and then relational operators, again this is used to compare, okay, values and then decide what course of action to take. So if A is less than B, okay, and then greater than symbol, less than or equal to, a greater than or equal to, and if you want to even check what type of data a variable is, okay, if A is integer, decimal, string, you can do that. Equality, which means are these same? Okay, again the equality, the catch is between, there's a difference between reference type and value type. In value type, only the value that is stored in these two variables are compared, but in reference type, it actually checks to see whether both these references point to the same object. Okay, again when you use reference type for equality, you have to be very careful. Okay, both of them may have the same set of values, but if they point to two different locations on the memory, then the equality will fail. That is why we have other options called equals and other methods. Okay, not equal, okay, which is again the same thing for reference types and value types. Okay, so these are the relational operators that you can use. Bitwise operators, I am skipping it, but it's just basic. When you do a bit which is like only one, and bitwise and it's only 1 and 1 will actually give you 1, anything else will give you 0. Okay, so it's mostly based on the logical things. Okay, in case of OR, if any of them is 1, you will get 1 for it. Okay, so and then let's go into some data structures. Okay, so single dimension array. Okay, array is a data structure which can hold same type of element, okay, n number of times. It's a collection that can hold the same type of elements. Okay, if you declare an integer array, it can hold any number of integers. Okay, so you can see the basic single dimension array is just one row. That's it. So you have a one row, you declare the size of the array up front, and then you start to assign values to them. Okay, and you can directly initialize them without even giving size, so that it takes care. Two-dimensional array is a set of where it has multiple rows and columns. Okay, and both the number of rows, the number of columns in each row should be the same. It cannot be different in a two-dimensional array. Okay, so a two-dimensional array can have multiple rows and multiple columns, but each column, number of columns in each row must be the same. Okay, so we specify like this is going to have, okay, like say 10 rows and 5 columns in each. Okay, so that's how it is. So if you look at the example, it's actually 5 rows and 2 columns each. Okay, that's what it really is. Okay, and then jagged array. Okay, this is where you can have multiple rows and each row can have different number of columns. Okay, so you have to go for jagged array if you want multiple rows, but each row can have different number of columns. Okay, and again, the type of value stored in these single dimensional, two dimensional and jagged array should be the same. It can only be one type. You cannot have multiple types like integer. One row cannot have integer, the other row cannot have decimal. Okay, so it has to be a single type. That's the problem with array, limitation with array. Again, one of the other control statement is switch case. Okay, where if you are using if else multiple times, okay, to check for a condition for a same variable, okay, then you need to rewrite that using switch case. Okay, and the only limitation with switch case is the variable that you check should be of value type. It cannot be of reference type. Okay, the exception is string. Okay, for now you can assume string to be like a value type. Okay, but it's actually a reference type. So switch, give the variable that you want to check and check for what values what should be executed. And if you look very carefully, each case statement should end with break, otherwise it will run the next case statement also until it finds a break. Okay, and if none of the conditions, if the variable is holding a value that is not present in any of these case statements, it will automatically go to default and execute a set of statements for it. Okay, which is the last else block in the if else condition. So we will do a demo on that too. Finally, your application will have some errors. As I said, basically developers tend to assume a lot of things. For example, if you want to check if a file is empty, we just straight away try to get the size of the file, but the problem is the first thing we have to check is whether the file exists. If we try to miss it, obviously your application is going to get an error, and you can catch that error. Okay, and you can handle it gracefully so that the user doesn't even see this error or see some message that they can't really understand. So you put, if you suspect a particular statement is going to fail based on some assumptions, then put them inside a try, and then in the catch you just catch what type of exception you are looking for. You can just go for now generic exception type, and then finally that's where you clean up some things, saying, hey, okay, my program got this critical error, so I'm cleaning up, releasing all my memory, and then I'm going to close this application now. Okay, if you want to throw custom errors, then you can use throw statement. Throw new the exception and then give a message saying, hey, my application is shutting down because this critical file is not there. Okay, so these are some of the things. These exceptions again are returned to a file called log file, and these log files are analyzed by developers whenever an application has any problem. Okay, so exceptions are very, very important. If you handle exceptions properly, your life will be very, very, very easy. Okay, so looping statements. Loop statements, if you want to execute a set of statements repeatedly based on some conditions or until some conditions is either true or false, then you use loop statements. Again, the basic looping statement that people use is for, okay, where you initialize a variable and you specify a condition saying, hey, until this variable value is this, you go ahead and execute whatever is present in the loop, and then increment the loop variable value by either 1, 2 or something. Okay, so for integer I equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. Okay, so one of the common mistakes the developers make when they use loop statement is somehow they miss some condition or something, and the loop runs into indefinite mode. There is no exit for the loop. Okay, so you have to be very careful when you write a looping statement so that you don't really create a problem of indefinite loop. Okay, so you have to be very careful. So see that the condition that is going to terminate the loop should occur at some point of time. Okay, so For loops are okay, but mostly people tend to get into indefinite loop when they use actually while and do while. Okay, I will explain that. And the other type of for loop is for each, where, as I said, if you have an array which has 10 numbers, you don't really need to find the count of it and then put that count in the index variable and then try to use it. Just use for each integer I in the array. Okay, and one of the general guidelines that we follow for this looping is, no, it's really a programmer's laziness where we have the variable names just as a single letter. Don't have a variable name just single letter. The main reason I'm telling it is very difficult to rename it when it comes to single letter. You cannot really find a variable with a single letter. Imagine if I just want to find and replace the variable name I with something meaningful, idx. If I do Control F and press I, I'm going to get right away a lot of i's. Okay, if else will show, integer will show, and other things. Okay, so you make sure you don't really have a single letter named variable. That's a very bad practice. Okay, please avoid that. I intentionally put it like this so that I can show that mistake. And the other is while condition. The while is while, okay, some condition is true, that is until some condition is true, okay, execute these set of statements. Okay, otherwise when that condition is not true, fail it. Okay, so integer I equal to 0, I less than 10, which means 0 is less than 10, execute this statement. And again, this is where most people make it into indefinite mode. They don't really change the value of I, they forget to change it. So if you are using while statement, make sure the condition, the variable that you use in the condition, the value of that variable should be changed within the while loop. Okay, so make sure. So here I increment I, so until it is 10, okay, it will execute. Do while is slightly altered, wherein you execute a loop statements at least once and then check and then execute it further as long as the condition is true. Okay, this will happen sometimes. Okay, in some cases where you need to execute the loop at least once, and then if it is based on some condition, until some condition is true, you execute it. So you don't have until condition, which is provided in other program languages, where you execute a loop until a particular condition is false. Okay, you can use that, do the same using do while or while with a negative operator. That's all. Okay, and then loop alteration statement. Okay, this is the final slide for this video. In some cases, you may need to even alter your loop's execution. Okay, for example, you have a value, you have a loop that prints, say, odd numbers and even numbers. Okay, and the message is different. Okay, 1 is a odd number, 2 is an even number. Okay, so in that case, you need to have a if statement and say, hey, if I percentage 2 equal to 0, double equal to 0, which means I is an even number, else I is an odd number. Okay, so you can do it. Or in some cases within the loop, if for example you are writing to a file and you are checking the file size also, and if the file size exceeds 100 MB, okay, you break the loop. You come out of the loop saying, hey, file size exceeded 100 MB, so I'm not going to write anything other than just break. Use break statement to come out of the loop totally. Okay, and the other is return statement, which will actually return the control back to the function which called this function. Okay, or return or end the program. Okay, if this is the parent function. Continue is actually to bypass. Okay, for example, you have values 0 to 10, but on a particular value it should not execute the loop at all. It should skip that value. Use continue. Okay, so if you use continue, the statements below that will not get executed if that condition is met. Okay, and the other way to come out of the loop is throw an exception. Okay, saying, hey, this is an error, the file is over 100 MB, I'm not going to write it, and then throw an error. Okay, so this is the last slide. So the next presentation will be related to object-oriented programming. So I will go through the basics from this presentation, and then also there's a separate session for object-oriented programming. Okay, so that's all for this, and see you